The story of Silent Hill 2 begins in this dingy roadside bathroom, kind of like any normal bath. The protagonist, James, psychs himself up in the mirror. He was recently sent a letter from his deceased wife, Mary, telling him to meet her in their special place, which is located in the town of Silent Hill. This game is very atmospheric. The view ahead of James dissolves into this neon haze. Terrifying stuff. You then proceed through a nearby forest. There are some strange sounds, but for the most part, it is peaceful. There is a weird well, which is a direct reference to the Dung Eater's well. Eventually you come to a cemetery, where you meet Angela Orozco. She seems kind of out of it. Angela warns you that the town is dangerous, and admits that she is also looking for someone here, her mother. James says that he hopes she finds her family. He is a very nice guy and would never do anything bad. After some more walking, you eventually make your way into Silent Hill. This game has one of the most tense and scary ways of introducing the first enemy. Lots of people like to say that Silent Hill 2 has clunky combat, that it's kind of annoying and not very good. I disagree. It's really fun. The way that this white boy just destroys these creatures is very entertaining. Personally, from a critical perspective, I think that this exhibits the feel of small-town America that Silent Hill 2 is inspired by. Of course, this is a survival horror game like Resident Evil, so you have limited ammo and limited health. Yeah, you die in one hit. There are no exceptions. It creates a really tense and scary atmosphere, because you could lose all your progress at any moment. The first level ends with you finding a mysterious radio, which calls to jam, just like the letter. James suspects that his wife might be waiting for him at the park, but the path to it is blocked, so you need to head through an apartment building. You can find a newspaper on the ground here. It talks about a serial killer called Walter Sullivan. His character was actually used in the 4th Silent Hill game. That game is about a room. Rooms are these very complex things. Usually they will have 4 walls and a roof. The vast majority of the time there will be a door so you can enter it. The true horror of Silent Hill 4 is that the door is locked, so you cannot enter or exit the room. There is actually a locked door in this area that references this. You progress by entering a reference to unlocked doors. This level is called Rooms in reference to Silent. You begin the level unarmed and have to borrow this guy's weapon. Compared to the previous level, this one is darker and incredibly scary. After the conclusion of the first section, you will come to these bars with the mysterious figure hiding behind them. They call it Pyramid Hat. It is symbolic of James's obsession with Egyptian culture. For example, his favorite game is Assassin's Creed Origins. James loved exploring the beautifully realized open world environments in that game. The tale of Bayek and Aya kickstarted his obsession with Egypt. James actually spent his honeymoon with Mary in Egypt. When he gets to the other side of the bars, Pyramid Hat has been replaced with a small human. This is really scary. Eventually you find some guy vomiting into a toilet. This is really scary. His name is Eddie Dump Truck Ass, and he claims he didn't kill the dead guy in the room next to him. Eddie says he doesn't know anything about a red pyramid thing. This is because Silent Hill looks different for other people. For example, James is obsessed with Egypt, so the monsters reflect this. We are never told what the characters see exactly, but judging by their reactions, it is different to what James sees. Eddie also talks about how something brought him to this town, just like Angela and James. After systematically exterminating the foul creatures that inhabit this apartment complex, you meet Angela again. She's kind of just laying in front of a mirror contemplating the corpuscular fury of light. Angela gives you her knife for no real reason. There isn't much subtext to read into here at all. After this, you encounter Pyramid Hat. Finally, you are able to exit the apartment building. You find this weird small person. She has a letter and accuses James of not loving Mary before running away. James is intrigued by this because he thought his wife was a friendless loser. He finally arrives at the park and finds a chick that looks like his wife. Her name is Maria. James tries to pick her up by saying she looks like his dead wife. After this fails, he realizes that maybe Mary is waiting for him at their other special place, a hotel on the other side of the lake. James decides to abandon Maria in this town full of monsters and head off on his own to the hotel, but Maria insists on coming along. They then teleport to a bowling alley where Eddie and the small human are hanging out. She goes full Lamar Davis on his ass. When James appears, she runs away again. James and Maria chase the small human into Silent Hill's hospital. Maria just kind of stands in the lobby while James brutally slaughters everything nearby.
Hi.
She does not even care when he does cool John Wick stuff. After more senseless violence, Maria gets sick and has to lie down. Probably because of what she just saw, James locks her in a nearby room, where she is traumatized by the gunshots. He then proceeds to destroy every single living organism within the hospital. James shows no remorse. Blood coats the floors. Eventually he finds the small human. She claims that she was best friends with his wife. James accuses her of lying because he thinks his wife was a friendless loser. This makes the goblin sad and she runs away. Eventually you make your way to the roof. There is a copy of the Squidward creepypasta here, and James reads it all. Maria appears behind him and accuses him of abandoning her to read stories about Squidward. James apologizes and they go to look for the Hobbit. However, disaster strikes. Pyramid Hat appears and he brutally slays Maria. James says, "No, oh," and just kind of stands there. He then teleports across the town to the Historical Society. James heard they had a cool Egypt exhibit here through the weird radio he picked up. However, nothing could prepare him for what he would see. This is the true survival horror. He then finds a hole in the wall which leads to a very short staircase. This takes him to a prison. There is a hole here and he jumps down it. This symbolizes his descent into his self-persecution triggered by his guilt over murdering his wife Mary. That's just a joke. James would never do that. Immediately, he kills a guy. This entire level is basically a commentary on the American private prison industry. The conditions of this prison are so poor that it becomes impossible to rehabilitate the prisoners. He meets Eddie again. Eddie admits to killing the guy next to him as well as the toilet guy. This makes James angry because he does not like murder. After further rampaging through the prison, James eventually comes to an elevator which takes him further down, into some kind of underground tunnel area. Maria is stuck in some kind of prison cell down here. Somehow, she has returned. She does not remember dying, and she is also really nice to James. James tells her to wait there while he completes her Mass Effect loyalty mission. This level is one of the more abstract parts of the game. You rampage around these dark tunnels. They don't seem to really relate to any real part of Silent Hill. There are also some pyramid hats down here. Eventually, you find some paper conveniently placed in your path that explains the entirety of Angela's backstory. She was abused by her entire family and murdered her brother and father. Then, like a meter down from these notes, you find Angela. That was really convenient. She gets really angry at James because a lifetime of abuse has conditioned her to be deeply distrustful of men. Angela thinks that James is trying to get with her. She implies that James murdered his wife. Angela's reasoning is that he wanted to be with someone else and did not want her around anymore. She then runs away. James then continues on to Maria's cell. What does it look like, James? She's dead. He then finds a grave marked with his name and jumps into it. Because why not? You come across Eddie in a cold place. He has gone completely crazy and vows to murder anyone who is mean to him. James naturally says something that could be taken as an insult. This really sets Eddie off, so James follows him and shoots him with a shotgun. This is conflict resolution. After a short boat ride, you finally arrive at the hotel. This is probably the most interesting location in the game. It is the only area that really comes to terms with James's ultra-violence. For example, the carpet is a deep red, like the blood of his enemies. You have to breach and clear each room with lethal precision. This level hammers home that James is an extremely violent man. This foreshadows what happens later in the level. You find the small human and she gives you the letter that she had been carrying. It's from Mary to the small human, whose name happens to be Laura. In it, Mary says goodbye to Laura, and it confirms that they were friends. James is shocked at this revelation, as he assumed that his wife was a friendless loser. She tells James that there is a second letter before leaving. James rampages through a bar searching for more information. He comes across Angela in a very tragic scene. She talks deeply about her trauma and walks up the burning staircase to her end. James immediately gets back to blasting monsters. Through the blood-red carnage, he finds his way to an old hotel room that he and Mary once stayed in. There is a tape inside and James watches it. The tape shows Mary's decline into illness and reveals that James murdered her. For some reason, this version of James is wearing cool sunglasses. Laura appears and naturally James tells this child that he murdered her friend. Nice way to navigate that whole situation, James. He hears Mary's voice over the radio and proceeds onwards. James comes to a room with Maria and two pyramid hats. They brutally murder her. He then goes full anime protagonist on them. As he walks down the hallway, it is revealed that Mary was abusive towards him, as her illness made her incredibly depressed and destroyed her self-esteem. He runs up a staircase and murders a bunch of monsters. Because this is a video game, he finds Mary waiting for him at the top. However, this is actually Maria. She begs James to take her with him. James says that he doesn't need her anymore. Man, that guy sure is great at killing things. It is then made clear why he killed Mary. He could not cope with being her caretaker. However, he also didn't want her to die. The spirit of Mary then tells him to go on with his life. She gives him a letter. This is the same as the one from the start of the game. However, it features an extra part, which serves as a final goodbye and conveniently absolves James of his guilt. The game then comes to an end. Now that you understand the full context of Silent Hill 2's story, let's take a look at it a bit more closely. Maria represented an idealized version of Mary. She was not sick with the illness that plagued Mary, and she was also a lot more Mass Effect, if you understand what I mean. The game ended with James rejecting this ideal version of his wife, as he chose to come to terms with his guilt and the reality of what he had done. Her character serves to contextualize the burden that his wife became in her illness, and to illustrate what James had lost. It is natural for someone in James's position to potentially come to loathe the one that they love, due to the stress that occurs when you have to take on the duties of the caretaker. Most people would naturally feel guilty about feeling this way. Silent Hill 2 is about this journey of guilt and the destruction of the relationship that can occur. This aspect of destruction is heavily present in the hyper-violent combat of the game. Throughout the journey, James brutally destroys beasts in various violent sequences. It is a very angry game. The gameplay succeeds at highlighting the irrational anger that can potentially surface during a caretaker relationship. This anger is also present in the story, from the radio conversation to James wearing sunglasses. Pyramid Hat represents James's obsession with Egypt. That's all there is to it. If you enjoyed this video, you should subscribe to my channel. It would look great on your resume.